Today, we are going to work on the Topic 9 review. The questions on this review are very similar to the ones on your actual test. There will be only 9 questions on the actual test. Please make sure that you take good notes and that you're understanding each problem. If you have trouble understanding a problem, go back and re-watch the way I explain it. If you're still having trouble, make sure you circle it so you can let me know and I can work with you. Number 1, draw lines to match each expression on the left to an equivalent expression on the right. Okay, so if we look at these, we have 1/10 plus 1/10. Whoops, sorry, I'm going to fix that for you. All right. We have 1/10 plus 1/10 plus 1/10. So we know that that is going to equal 3/10. I'm just going to write that right there. It's hard to see, but it says 3/10. Now you have to look on the right and find another expression that's also going to equal 3/10. So if I look at the third one down, I know that 2/10 plus 1/10 is 3/10. So I'm going to draw a line. Make sure that your line is straight. All right, let's go to the next one. The next one, we have 4/10 plus 5/10. And we know that that is going to be 9/10. If we look on the right, we have the same equation just flipped, which is the commutative property of addition. So 5/10 plus 4/10 is also 9/10. So that one's going to go that way. All right, let's move on. If we look at the one in the middle, we have 2/10 plus 3/10 is 5/10, plus 6 more would be 11/10. Don't worry about the parentheses when you're adding because it's not going to change anything. Then look on the right. We also have over here, the second one, 2/10, and then we have 3/10 plus 6/10. Well, 3/10 plus 6/10 is 9/10, plus 2/10 is 11/10. So we know that that one's going to work. And then for our last one, we have 11/10 plus 4/10, and 11 plus 4 is 15. And if we look on the right, we have 16/10 minus 1/10, and 16 minus 1 is also 15. So that's going to work for that one. You will have one very similar to this on your test. Number 2. On Monday, 3/12 of the students went on a field trip. We want to know what fraction of the students did not go on the field trip. So here we have our whole. And then if I look at this equation, it's asking how many did not go. Since we know that 3/12 went, so one whole would be 12/12. So we have 12/12. Now we're going to subtract the 3/12 that went. We're going to end up with 9/12. So 9/12 of the students did not go on the field trip because only 3/12 went. All right, number 3. We have Riley planted flowers in some of her garden. Then she planted vegetables in 2/8 of her garden. Now 7/8 of Riley's garden is planted. What fraction of Riley's garden is planted with flowers? Let's go back and read this again because it sounds confusing. So it says that she planted flowers in some of her garden, so we don't know how much. Then she planted vegetables in 2/8. And so now 7/8 of her garden is planted. Okay, so we need to know 7/8 is what's planted. So 7/8 is going to be our ending result. Okay, I'm going to change this so it's not on highlighter. So our answer is going to equal 7/8 because it says here that now 7/8 of her garden is planted. It says she planted some number we don't know. I'm going to use an X with flowers, plus she planted 2/8 with vegetables. So we need to figure out what X is. So think, what plus 2/8 is going to equal 7/8? Well, your answer should be 5/8 because 5/8 plus 2/8 would equal 7/8. So our answer should be D. Moving on to number 4. We need to select all the expressions that show a way to decompose 7/8. So basically, what are you adding together or subtracting? I think in this case, we're adding all of them to get to 7/8. Well, I know that 3/8 plus 4/8, 3 plus 4 is 7, is 7/8. So this one is going to work. Now let's look at the next one. We have 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 5/8. Well, 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 5 more is 7. So that one will also work. Our third one down, we have 3/4 plus 4/4. That's going to equal 7/4, not 7/8. So that one will not work. Then we have 1/8 plus 3/8 plus 3/8. Well, 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 3 more is 7. So the third one will work. In our last one, we have 1 plus 2, which is 3, plus 3 more is 6, plus 1 more is 7. So that one will also work. All right, number 5. So for number 5, it says in here, for questions 5A to 5D, choose yes or no to tell if 4/12 will make each statement true. Okay, we have 5A. So we have 3/12, and 3/12 plus 4/12 would equal 7/12. So yes, that one would work. 16/12. So now we have 16/12. This is for B. Minus, we're using 4/12. 4/12 is going to equal 16 minus 4 is 12. So 12/12, which would be equal to 1 whole. So this one would also work. All right, here's where it gets a little tricky. We have 1 and 1/12. Well, if I have 1, whoops, sorry about that. If I have 1 and 1/12 plus 4/12s, I'm going to end up with 1 and 5/12s. And over here, it says 5 and 1/12. Well, that doesn't work because the answer is 1 and 5/12, not 5 and 1/12. So this one would be a no. Now I have 1 and 5/12. So I have 1 and 5/12 minus 4/12. Well, I don't have to regroup because I can subtract 5 from 4. So I'll end up with 1 and 1/12. So this answer would also be yes. All right, number 6. And this one is on your test. So are the other two, but this one is very similar to the one on your test. Use benchmark fractions to estimate sums and differences less than, greater than, or equal to 1. Write each expression in the correct space. Okay, I'm just going to draw arrows, but tomorrow, because it's hard for me to write, tomorrow on your test, you're actually going to have to write them in. If you are listening to this video, please circle number 5. Okay, number 6. So we have to figure out if it's going to be less than 1 or greater than 1. Remember, using our benchmark fractions. So let's look at this first one. The first one that we have is 7/8. Well, I know 7/8 is close to 1, and I know that 5/10 is close to a half. What I'm going to do is the fractions that are close to 1, I'm going to write this down for you. The ones that are close to 1, I'm going to highlight in green. The ones that are close to 1/2, I'm going to highlight in blue. And the ones that are going to be closer to 0, I'll do red. Okay, so I know that 7/8 is close to 1 and 5/10 is a half. So this is definitely going to be greater than 1. All right. Here I have 1 1/2. So we have our 1. Oops. Let me erase that. It's tricky. Okay, so we have our 1 whole. And then we have half, which is going to be blue. So that's 1 1/2. Minus, this looks like 1 whole. It's 5/6 would be closer to 1 whole. So if we have 1 1/2 minus a whole, this one is going to be less than 1 because 1 minus a half, or 1 and a half minus 1 whole would be closer to half. So that's going to be less than 1. All right, here we have 1 whole. So I'm going to highlight this green for you. Minus 2/3. Well, 2/3 is pretty close to 1. So you know that your answer is going to definitely be less than 1. Okay. Here we have a half. So we're going to highlight that one blue. And then we have 2/3, which I'm going to say is closer to a whole, because 3/3 would be a whole. So this answer is going to be greater than 1. Sorry, my kids are playing with the dog. All right, now I have 5/12, which would be a half, plus 1/4. So 1/4 is tricky, because a half plus 1/4 would be closer to 3/4. So this one is actually going to be less than 1. Sorry, I made it red instead of blue. And then our last one, we have 1 and 1/6, which would be closer to 1. Plus, I should have highlighted that. This one should be closer to 1. Plus 1 whole, which would also be closer to 1. So we're going to end up with a very small number. So this one is also going to be less than 1. So when you're doing a problem like this, just use your benchmark fractions to help you determine. You don't actually have to add or subtract them. We have not learned how to change the denominators yet. So just see if the number is closer to 1, 1 whole, or 1/2, and just do your best. Number 7. Roger and Suli each decomposed 1 and 1/6. Roger wrote 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 2/6 plus 3/6. Suli wrote 3/6 plus 4/6. Who is correct? Explain. Okay, so I'm going to make a little chart. I've got Roger, and then I've got Suli. Okay, I'm just going to draw a line. If I add up Roger's, I have 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 2/6 plus 3/6. So 1 plus 1 is 2, plus 2 more is 4, 5, 6, 7. And I will end up with 7/6. For Suli, I have 3/6 plus 4/6, which is also 7/6. And if we're going to fix 7/6, we can say 6 goes into 7 one time, and then put your denominator. Since 6 times 1 is 6, 7 minus 6 is 1, we end up with 1 and 1/6. So they are both correct. So they are both correct because both answers equal 7/6, and when you fix it, it's going to equal 1 and 1/6. All right, look at number 8. It is 8/10 a mile from Liz's house to the market. Liz walks 6/10 of a mile. She stopped for a break and walked the rest of the way to the market. Which equation represents Liz's walk? Well, we know that it's going to the right, so we know that we're adding, so it's not going to be C or D, because those are both using subtraction. Now, we're going to end up on 8/10, so both of these end up on 8/10, but she's starting at 6/10, and then she's jumping 2 more spaces and getting to 8/10. So this is the only one that would work. 6/10 plus 2/10 equals 8/10. All right, and you can go ahead and skip number 9. We are on number 10. The Jacobs kept track of the time they spent driving on their trip. We need to find out how many hours the Jacobs drove on Monday and Tuesday. We also need to draw a bar diagram to represent the problem. Well, we are looking at Monday and Tuesday. So, since we're trying to find out how much they spent driving, we know that we need to add. So we have 5 and 3/4 plus 4 and 3/4. So if I'm going to add these, add your whole numbers and then your fractional parts. So you'll end up with 9 and 6/4. And we just have to fix it. So we have 9 We know that 6/4 is going to be greater than a whole. So we have 9, and then we need to put plus. Well, 4 goes into 6 one time. Then we're going to have 4 is our denominator, and 6 minus 4 is 2. So 9 plus 1 is 10 and 2/4, or 10 and a half. So they spent 10 and 1/2 hours driving. If I'm going to draw a bar diagram, on the top of my bar, I'm going to put 10 and a half. And then I'm going to draw the bar, and in one side of the bar, I'm going to put 5 and 3/4. And in this is a 4. And in the other side of the bar, I'm going to put 4 and 3/4. And that would represent that problem. Now we have to find out how many total hours that they spent, because it says how many hours did the Jacobs drive in all. So what I'm going to do is even though we've already found 2 of them, which you could normally just take the 10 and 2/4 and add the other 2, I'm going to do it with all of them, because you're going to have a problem on your test tomorrow where you're going to have to add a few different numbers, more than 2. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4. So this is how you would do that. You would have 5 and 3/4 plus 4 and 3/4. I'm just adding all of them. So we got 5 and 3/4, 4 and 3/4. Now we have 2 and 1/4. Then we have 6 and 3/4. So we're adding all of them because it wants to know how far they went. So first, just add your whole numbers. So if I add them all up, I know 6 plus 4 is 10. I'm going out of order, but I'm finding my 10. Then 5 plus 2 is 7. So I have 17 for my whole number. And then for my fractional parts, I have 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 1 more is 7, plus 3 more is 10. So we end up with 17 and 10/4. So now we're just going to fix that. So I'm going to draw a line right here. So I'm starting with 17 as my whole number, plus you have to just think, how many times does 4 go into 10? Well, 4 goes into 10 2 times. Put your denominator. 4 times 2 is 8. 10 minus 8 would be 2. So now we can write our final answer. 17 plus 2 would be 19 and 2/4. Or if you wanted extra credit, you can say 19 and 1/2, because 2/4 is the same as a half. But I would accept 2/4. And then your label would be hours. To explain it, if you have to explain it on your test, you could say this. Hold on a second. You could say, I added the whole numbers and the fractional parts and then simplified the fraction. And by simplifying, all we did was we took this fraction over here and we fixed the 10/4. And we made it into 19 and 2/4, or 19 and a half. Once you are finished with this whole review, go ahead and make sure that you understand all of them. And then write your name on the top of the paper above number 1 and circle it, and then put a star next to it. That's how I will know that you listened to this video.